Welcome back to another episode of Cape Ann Today with our favorite reporters from the Gloucester Times, Stephen Hagan covering Essex, Rockport, and Manchester, and Ethan Forman covering Gloucester. Hi, you guys.
Happy New Year. Happy New
Hello,
Year,
everybody.
Here we are. We're still doing it in 2023.
Still doing it.
Okay, Stephen, let's start with you. You have a really lovely story about somebody who's coming to Rockport, a new resident of Rockport.
Well, everything's tentative, but it looks like it's pretty much going to happen. A comfort dog. A lot of communities in Massachusetts and beyond are getting them in their police departments to be used in the school departments and out in the community to ease students and residents when they're feeling uncomfortable, suffering from things like ADHD. Anyway, Gloucester has one. I believe Beverly has one. I know that Beverly's Endicott College has one. Reading has one, my former town. And Rockport is in the process of getting one. And he may be on board by the summer and ready to start working in the Rockport schools in the fall.
I'm sorry, is there anything that prompted this? Was it COVID? Was it just the stress that we've all been reading about that kids are feeling? Anything in particular that prompted this?
That's a good question. Heather, you should be in these shoes. I'm telling you, yes, they're very important questions. I don't know how to answer that other than to perhaps say that a lot of departments are doing it, and they're falling in place, I guess. So the town of Rockport is doing what other towns are doing.
Yeah.
So the cool thing is the dog is going to be connected to the school resource officer. I'm sorry, his name escapes me at the moment. I think it's Anderson or something like that. He will live with the officer. He will go primarily, as I said, to the Rockport School Department. But he'll also be out in the community connecting. And, Rockport's such a dinky little town, as you know. So he's become a popular fixture. I'm sorry?
Did you say it's a dinky little town? Stop it.
I did.
Oh
I did.
Heather, don't you live in Rockport, don't you? I'm not going to take no for an answer.
Excuse me about it. Excuse me.
I'm so sorry, Rockportians. I did not mean to offend you.
Yeah,
I love Rockport.
No offense. All but mighty, but
after that, I have a couple of things from Manchester.
we got to finish with the dog.
Oh yeah.
We just have to say it's a really lovely thing, and we know that animals can really help everybody to just cuddle up, and I got mine sitting right here next to me. And I know the Rockport kids will be so happy to see that guy. Will he be coming, or he or she be coming to school every day?
If he's a dog in good standing, I think he'll probably be getting an A for his attendance report. So yeah. I don't know.
All right. Now we can move on to Manchester by the sea.
We have Ace in Gloucester.
That's right.
Handled by Pete Sutera.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've met him a few times, and he's a great pup.
Yeah, he's with the community impact unit, right? He shows up when there's and kids can come see him.
Yeah, he's at the middle. I've seen him at the middle school, and he was with he's with the community impact unit, Pete Sutera, and he's a great asset to the city.
Yeah, well, we want to know all the details when our pup arrives. Okay,
definitely going to do it. I mean, this is a story. It's a preview. I feel good. I feel kind of patting myself on the back for getting it, but I'll do a follow story when the dog arrives. So
great, and
including a good photograph. I'm sorry.
Yeah, pictures. I'm talking to Pete Bilodeau there in that room. We want pictures. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So Manchester by the Sea.
Shifting over to Manchester by the Sea. Covered their Tuesday Board of Select Board meeting. One of the things they talked about was the MBTA housing district in Manchester. A lot of communities that all the communities that are part of the MBTA planning district have to because of a relatively new state law, they have to develop a plan for housing, for affordable housing in their towns. So frankly, just from a personal perspective, I've been aware of this. I've been very slow to cover this because it's a little complicated, but the Tuesday meeting was very instrumental for me to see what's happening in at least one town, and I'm sure it's being mirrored in several towns. The situation in Manchester is the zoning district, the MBTA zoning district amounts to 37 acres. It could have a potential at build out of 555 units, which is a lot of housing in a small little town like Manchester. But I've been assured, not assured, but I've been reminded that it probably will never get to that, but that is potentially what could happen. So they're trying to be very proactive in Manchester. They're holding meetings. They talked at the select board meeting, they talked about a possible agenda item at the next town meeting to, I guess, plan the district itself. So they're being, as I said, they're being proactive.
So Stephen, this is, as I understand it, it's the state is only requiring the towns to zone for this residential housing adjacent to the commuter rail, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So it's not a guarantee that these buildings will be made. It's just
Oh, no, exactly. That's the point that's been repeated time and time again over the past couple of days to me, that, the potential build out is a potential, but it's probably, it's really unlikely that it'll get anywhere near that. So, but there will probably, following development stories for the past 20 years in Massachusetts, developers are pretty, they're pretty aggressive. They like to build. So I have to, take off my reporter's hat and put on my editor's hat and applaud Manchester officials for taking the bull by the horns, and they're trying to do what they can to create the district they want.
It seems like they're ahead of Gloucester. In Gloucester, they're talking about an action plan for the TOD communities, and with an action plan deadline submittal to the state of January 31st. And there's a lot of talk in Gloucester through the grapevine that there's people who don't even want that they don't even want the mayor to even do an action plan. And subsequently, in order for it to pass in Gloucester, they'd have to go before the city council. And they have until the end of 2024 to get the zoning done. Zoning would be done by the city council. And again, they're coming up against this feeling that this is zoning and not a mandate to build.
Right. I think that everyone's having to pull apart that discussion so carefully, because it's simply zoning. It's like saying, that a stretch of 133 is going to be zoned for industrial, and we've seen one CBT place there, right? So, or not zoned for industrial out there. You know what I mean? But it's zoning and not building. But you're right, Stephen. Maybe is this an opportunity for developers? It's going to be kind of interesting. But it is also an opportunity for housing, and that is such an issue, right?
Absolutely.
Was there anyone who was an advocate for this zoning at the meeting on Tuesday?
Well, yes, in the sense that they want to shape the zoning to the best they can. They as I said a couple of times, they're trying to be proactive, and they're trying to do what they can to shape the zoning district. But it's apparently the town planner, whose name escapes me right now, is a woman. She's wonderful. She used to be the Weston town planner. She said the state definitely wants this. So it's basically a law. It is a law,
right,
that MBTA member communities have to develop these districts. So,
Well, so you also have an interesting story about the BOS reaching out to the community for some conversation.
Oh, yes, Conversation Corner. That is an effort by the Select Board in Manchester to not just talk to people on the phone or in their offices, but to actually establish specific meeting places and dates where they can gather with members of the community. They're going to start it coming up, I think, the 19th. Pretty sure that's the right date. And this first incarnation of the Conversation Corner is taking place at Town Hall in Manchester. They are also planning to hold them out in the community at different sites, festivals, that sort of thing. So it's just an effort to inform the public and listen to what people's concerns are.
Well, you also finished a story this week in the Gloucester Times about the Board of Selectmen addressing the harbor management plan. So there's a lot, they're doing a lot. They're busy, that Board of Selectmen, and they probably need to feel the need to be reaching out to the community for input and to connect. But do you want to mention anything about that story?
Perhaps I should take this opportunity to it's a very complex picture because there's a couple of things going on. There's the coastal management plan, which is a larger project. And then there's the harbor management plan, which is more specific to things like boating questions. Do anchors destroy or damage the seabed? I mean, that's just a small portion of it. And it's so much, they spoke in generalities, so I apologize if I had more specifics on my fingertips, but.
Well, in your story, it seemed to be the main concerns were flooding and the flooding of the downtown and how to manage the harbor in terms of those issues. That's what I understood. And there was the issue of, should they be looking for forming a task force, and should they be looking for outside expertise, perhaps with the UMass Boston Urban Harbor Institute? Or should they be looking for expertise from the Harbor Advisory Committee, which already exists?
They have the Harbor Advisory Committee. Apparently, the Select Board members have discussed with a few members of the Harbor Advisory Committee, and they're kind of saying, whoa, this is a big project. We may need to take a pass. So that's why they talked about creating a new task force that would have more specific expertise in matters related to the harbor.
Yeah. Well, so let's move on to you, Ethan, because there's zoning issues still happening in Gloucester also, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're on the water, right? We're talking about being on the water. Tonight, or actually Thursday night, you're gonna have to, viewers of Cape Ann today are gonna have to tune in to the city's website and catch the meeting if they hadn't watched it last night about the planning board taking up new floodplain zoning. Basically would restrict residential development in well, it would restrict it, prohibit it in so-called velocity zones. You can imagine that. Zones subject to 1% chance of flooding and storm waves. So think about something along the coast.
Yeah.
And very, really on the water.
Right.
And then, more restricted development in so-called AE zones. These are zones described on FEMA flood maps. So if you want to get flood insurance and you have a mortgage and you're required to carry it, you have to consult the FEMA flood maps for the National Flood Insurance Program. So this basically would restrict development in those areas. These new regulations, additions to the Gloucester zoning ordinance, but it's not something that's going to happen right away. Planning board has to have a public hearing, which they did on Thursday night.
Okay.
And which I haven't caught yet,
okay.
But I'll be watching.
So I was just a little confused. So they're establishing a map of floodplains. Is that what?
No, these are FEMA maps.
They're going by the FEMA maps, and they're just creating zoning using those FEMA maps. Is that right?
Yes, but one of the other things that they're doing is they're not like they're creating a district, a future flood district,
Okay,
a
not,
future flooding district, which would take into account sea level rise of 2.4 feet.
Mm.
So now I'm not up on where the elevations are now, but they're trying to sit there and say, you got to take into account sea level rise because the FEMA maps get old fast.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
That like they are updated maybe every decade. We already see the effects from the December, the storm in December.
Right.
What happened? I4C2 was flooded. Thatcher Road was flooded. Good Harbor Beach parking lot, that was all flooded out. Steve wound up getting wet on Stacy Boulevard trying to cover
Soaked.
the city
Soaked.
floods. And if you look at the FEMA flood maps, the downtown Rogers Street extending into the downtown Main Street
Right.
is I believe an AE zone. Parts of the fort, a velocity zone. So this is a big issue for the city, and the planning board I think is trying to be proactive, much like they try to do zoning for housing in advance of the TOD. In advance, they're trying to be a little more proactive because a lot of these changes will eventually come from the state.
Right.
So they're trying to get ahead of so we'll see. There's a public hearing. There was a public hearing on Thursday, and then this is going to have to follow up by city council action. Probably goes to their planning and development committee, and then they'd have to go before a public hearing. So nothing's written in stone. But if you want to learn more, I would tune into the planning board meeting of January 5th.
Okay. And again, this is only, this is limited to residential zoning. This is not.
Yeah, that's a good point. We're not talking about commercial or industrial uses on the harbor.
Yeah.
Which, look, they're in the floodplain, but hey, it's where you expect them to be. And really it's residential.
Right, right. So you have some lovely stories happening. And one is, we're going to finish with the Oak to Ember story, but you also were covering, actually not so lovely. Steve Douglas is having some issues with the city.
Well, what's happened is there's a waterways board in Gloucester, and their facility subcommittee had a meeting on Tuesday, rather sparsely attended meeting. And at this meeting, they discussed the grant that paid for the docks on Soloman Jacob's Landing. And in the language of the grant, it seems to say only recreational transient tie-ups. So if you charter a sailboat and you want to tie up for 30 minutes and pick up a transient mooring, you come in, drop off your passengers, leave. Sailboats, recreational boats, just to drop off. So I guess it's become busy. Freaky Tiki Tours, the Harbor Tours, their water shuttle that goes from Soloman Jacobs to St. Peter's Landing out to Rocky Neck, the studio. And there seems to be a feeling that the grant prohibits commercial tie-ups. So Mr. Douglas, who's got actually a grant from the city to start the water shuttle, is pretty upset. So we'll see how this plays out. This hasn't come before the city council, really hasn't come before the full waterways board. And I think the discussion the other night was, we have to make up signs to prohibit their tie-ups. And Harbor Tours is going to be one of those businesses that are affected. So we'll see how that all plays out. And that's just something I'm working on now, probably for Monday's paper.
It seems a little nutty that the city is on the one hand offering him a grant to run this business because they want this business, and then another board is saying, nope, you can't put it here.
Well, and then if you think about the harbor plan, they want to activate the waterfront. They don't want to prevent it from being activated.
Right.
And this landing, Soloman Jacob's Landing, is the only handicapped. It's not St. Peter's, isn't. St. Peter's is kind of small. It's a small landing. So you think about access to water, you think about a public landing and what really that entails. In other communities, they have docks and water shuttles coming and going. I think Salem does. I haven't heard anything about whether they have commercial tie-ups or not. So We'll see. We'll see where this goes. It's a developing story.
Okay, my big question is, where is Solomon Jacob's Landing?
The Harbor Loop,
Oh, okay, all right, I know which one it is.
up
Okay,
by the Harbor Masters building.
yeah, I know exactly.
And I'm glad you asked because I had to figure that out as well.
Okay, good.
I actually was there for the Coffin kids do a fishing program with the kids,
I
you
remember that.
know, and they took me out and the kids caught like 23 striped bass.
Yeah,
They were
that
just
was fun.
and that was but that's where we left from. So I have a good sense of where everything is.
Okay, well, now I know exactly where it is. All right, so Oak to Ember is finally opening, right?
Yeah, this is a 2-year project by chef Neil Maver. Big restaurant. He just over there now. So this is going to be a little bit of people opened their Gloucester Times this morning to look and over breakfast. They'll be reading about, hopefully, reading about Oak to Ember.
Mhm.
A new restaurant, smoky flavors. It's not barbecue per se, but smoked flavors, smoked fish, chicken,
And this is in,
smoked bacon, and it's a new restaurant by a chef who was at Tono
right,
for a while,
so this is right on the harbor, and it
where
is
the old Cape Ann Brewery was.
What did they do
Brewery.
with all the equipment, all the brewing equipment?
Well, it's not there anymore.
Okay, all right.
Where the tanks were, it's now the front dining room.
Okay, so it's not a brewery, it's a smoking kind of restaurant.
It's a smoking.
And are
Smoking.
are they pleased with this date as an opening date? I mean, I think there were a lot of people anticipating that it would open maybe last summer. I don't know, maybe in the fall. So are things okay with them to do an opening right now after the holiday?
Yeah, I mean, that's something I discussed with. I think they had a good. It opened on Wednesday. It was their first night open to the public. They had a soft opening. The chef told me that the governor was there on Monday.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's cool.
Outgoing Governor Charlie Baker from Swampscott. So there you go. Okay, he loves Cape Ann and was there. And I don't know. There was no discussion of. I guess that probably every restaurant wants to open up sooner rather than later.
Right.
But it looks like it's got a good following. And I think what he was telling me too is it's not competition with the other restaurants.
Mhm.
It's like a rising tide lifts all boats. People come, hey, let's go to Tono, let's check out Oak to Ember. The more the merrier. And it really is good for the seaport to have another premier restaurant.
Yeah, definitely. So did you have anything to eat, Ethan?
Because I went there on Thursday. It was 10 in the morning, and unfortunately they weren't cooking. Except if you go down Roger Street and you smell the wood smoke, they have a smoker out front. It's great.
That's really cool. Really cool. All right. Well, that's such interesting stories this week. You guys are starting off 2023 really well.
We hope so.
Yeah. All right. So we'll catch you next week.
Absolutely.
You got it.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Heather. Happy New
Bye,
Year.
Heather. Good to see you again.
Interested in a sponsorship? Email sponsor@1623studios.org to learn more.